This is Undaunted.Life, a man's podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Let's get into it. And you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. That is John 8:32. Guys, thanks so much for coming to the show today. I'm a little bit under the weather, so I may not be as animated vocally because, a couple of vocal cord surgeries. Got to take care of these pipes. Thanks a lot, Otis. So I don't have Roman the Giant up here anymore, so I have a little Maltese down there, so you might hear him chewing on a bone. Sorry about that. I don't like him nearly as much as I like Roman, but it is what it is. But guys, as always, we're very thankful to our donors. If you have not left a review of this show, a 5-star review, or shared the show with a friend, please do that. And I do want to also reiterate what we talked about yesterday on the show. So we had the big announcement. So I've been nervous all week. People around me are like, hey, Kyle, what's going on? I've been nervous about the launch of the Dominion program. It's been something that we've been thinking about for a very, very long time and something that we've been working on behind the scenes with Team One. Shout out to the Team One guys, but we are opening up a new Dominion team. And guys, if you don't know what the heck I'm talking about, make sure you check your emails because everyone on our email list got the announcement yesterday. But also we did a special bonus episode yesterday, episode 685. So go and check that out if you want more information. But guys, make sure you get your application in for Dominion. It ends next Tuesday. That's when the application process closes. And then everybody else just goes on the wait list. It's Undaunted.Life/Dominion. Undaunted.Life, Undaunted.Life/Dominion. You can check that out in the show notes, or you can just go to our website and it says Dominion across the top. You can find it there. So today we are doing a quick hitters bonanza after we get through with the main thing that we want to talk about. And hopefully I won't be doing a whole lot of quick hitters bonanzas in 2025 because basically how 2024 worked out is I would do all these interviews and then, Joby comes on once a month and Mark Wayne Mullen comes on once a month. And then I get to the end of the month, it's like, crap, I haven't been able to talk about all these stories. And I just kind of keep a note on my phone of the things that I want to talk about. So I want to be able to do that more often. So we'll see how it shakes out in 2025. Maybe it'll be a little bit different. But before I kind of give you the list of what we're going to talk about, obviously, the biggest news story, I guess, for this week is that President Joe Biden, on his way out of office, is going to be pardoning his son Hunter, but not just for the federal charge, the gun charge that he was charged with and then also convicted of, but for everything that he's done since 2014. So basically, for the last year or so, the White House has been saying that Joe Biden was definitely not going to do this, but everybody with a functioning prefrontal cortex knew that he was indeed and in fact going to do this. This is not a shock to everybody, but I'm not going to be giving full commentary on the quick hitters to this story because everybody and their dog has given their opinion on this, and mine's not going to be that different. The one thing that I will say that might be a little bit different is this kind of is the last nail in the coffin of the Joe Biden presidency of perhaps being the worst 4-year presidency, the worst presidential term of any modern president. There have been some bad ones historically. You can go and check those out. But in terms of modern presidents, I don't know that we've seen somebody that was as bad on the economic front, as bad on the foreign policy front, and as bad on the personal front. He got a ton of money, more money than any other president ever from Big Pharma. Hunter Biden for years and years and years was going around collecting bags of cash for the Bidens because of who his daddy was. And now Joe Biden is covering his tracks. Someone even mentioned, I bet he pardoned him because he thought that Hunter would, turn witness on him and kind of throw him under the bus. But yeah, I think it solidifies Joe Biden as the worst modern president that we've ever had. So on the Quick Hitters Bonanza, I'm going to be covering a lot of stories. The greatest archaeological discovery since the Dead Sea Scrolls confirming early worship of Jesus as God. Very important. Also, the Democrats and the mainstream media being absolutely full of crap about Trump being Hitler. The most effective Trump political ad from the 2024 election cycle. Oklahoma becoming the first state in the nation to purchase Bibles explicitly for in-school use. That's in the classroom. An illegal immigrant that brutally murdered Laken Riley escaping real justice. The Archbishop of Canterbury okaying gay sex while simultaneously protecting pedophiles in the Church of England. Pastor John Piper referring to Trump's reelection as evil. A Republican lawmaker who is also a rape survivor introduces a bill that would ban men wearing womanface from being able to access women's bathrooms, Italy banning couples from going abroad for surrogacy, WNBA players signaling a strike even after a $40 million loss from last season, one of their biggest seasons ever, and then the city of Los Angeles becoming a sanctuary city. So we're going to be talking about all that today. I'm making myself a little quick note here for the editor. Boom, let's get into it. But guys, before we get to the main subject of today's episode, I just need to correct the record about some things that I said back on episode 6 673. So episode 673. So that was my general election reaction podcast. So I recorded that podcast on November the 6th. So the election was on November the 5th. I recorded it early the morning of November the 6th. And this was after I woke up and saw that Trump won. So I had other plans for that Thursday's episode. I did not think in a million years that we would know who won the election because all the signs pointed to the fact that it was going to be an elongated counting process. Obviously, that wasn't the case. And so early morning of November the 6th, I went with the information that I had at the time, so I need to correct the record on some things that didn't end up being true. So with that, I jumped the gun on a few things. Here are the corrections. I said that Trump won 286 electoral college votes to Kamala's 226. Trump's actually got to 312 votes to Kamala's 226, so there's a correction. Also, I correctly said that Trump won the popular vote, but the margin I cited has obviously changed since then with more votes being counted. It looks like Trump won the popular vote by around 2.4 million votes. So he got around 77.1 million votes to 74.7 million votes for Kamala Harris. I also said that Arizona, Colorado, Maryland, Missouri, Montana, Nevada, New York, and Nebraska all passed pro-abortion laws. Now, as of that morning, November the 6th, Nebraska was trending the way that I said when I recorded, but it did turn out that Nebraskans actually did the right thing and did not approve the pro-abortion laws for their state. So I got a lot of messages from Nebraskans and from Cornhuskers. So sorry, please stop DMing me. This is your correction. But overall, I got some of those things wrong. I kind of jumped the gun on some of that stuff because of how things were looking and trending. But when I look back on my coverage of the election cycle, I, like many other people, got a lot of things wrong about this election cycle, okay? So I got a message from somebody that has admitted in his message that he hasn't listened to my show for about a year and a half. He's like, oh, well, I guess you were wrong about Trump and not supporting him and all that. So this is a guy that took the last thing he heard me say about Trump, which was probably about a year and a half ago, and just fast forwarded to today and just assumed that I've changed none of my ideas and none of my supporting to that point. And so, but for those of you that have been listening, you know that I've shifted and changed a lot as we've seen the landscape change of our political state that we're in, with Trump being shot at, all the different things that we saw. But obviously, I got so many things wrong. One, I thought Ron DeSantis had a real shot to win the nomination, and he never really did. I thought that for the majority of the election cycle, except for the last few months, I thought that Trump would be defeated. Right? And even in those final weeks, I even talked about on episode 673 that I thought that he could still lose. I thought that was a real possibility, and I was super duper wrong about that. I wasn't sure that the Democrats would replace Joe Biden. I just thought that he was too entrenched at that point. They obviously did. I didn't think in a million years that they would replace, Roomba president with retarded word salad VP, but they did. They put Kamala Harris in. They didn't do an open primary. I, like everyone in the world, didn't think that they would call the race on election night, and they did. I, like everyone else in the world, thought that in order for Trump to win, it would be narrowly in the Electoral College, but then he would also lose the popular vote. I was super duper wrong about that. I also thought that the Democrats would keep Kamala Harris in the basement so that they could, ride the vibes all the way into the White House, and that Kamala Harris, would somehow just find mass appeal. And the only two cohorts that she overperformed expectations on were one with women of color and two rich atheists. And I was very shocked by that. I thought that she would have some big wins across the board. And last thing is, as I've said for months and on multiple platforms, that I thought that no matter who won, that the country would burn. How many times did I say that on this show? I was like, if Trump loses, MAGA people are going to be pissed. If Kamala or Joe Biden lost, then Antifa and all these people, Black Lives Matter, they were just going to be burning down our cities. And at least for now, guys, I was wrong about that too. Like, I don't really know what it's going to look like as we get closer to the inauguration. Perhaps there's something that's being planned, or perhaps it was just such an overwhelming victory that all of the agitators that are on the left are just going to keep their bricks and Molotov cocktails on ice until something changes. So we'll see how that goes. But now we need to get into the subject matter for today's episode, okay? So the dude boxer, they said wasn't a dude, turns out to be a dude, right? So let's talk about that. So I think all guys like to be right. We like to be that one guy standing up, saying the thing that no one else will say, and then we like being vindicated in the end. But for a lot of us, we don't really get to experience that. For me, as a podcast show host, obviously I just went through a laundry list of things that I was wrong on, because I'm very open and honest about when I get things wrong. It just kind of is what it is. When you say something publicly and so fervently, it's going to happen. Like I have people sometimes send me messages or leave bad reviews, or like, this guy just seems so sure of his opinions and blah, 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 and he seems so cocky about everything. It's like, well, you wouldn't listen to the show if I didn't have strongly formed and fought opinions. If I was just like, yeah, I don't really know, Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, kind of do whatever feels right, flip a coin, who cares? No one would listen to a show like that. So invariably, you're going to have times where you're just flat out wrong. But sometimes, guys, you're so unbelievably right, and you're so vindicated in the face of people calling you horrible names that you just have to do the Mexican hat dance on their stupid, sad faces. And one of those times is happening right now, and I am here for it because it's mega delicious. So let's go all the way in the Wayback Machine to the Paris Olympics this last summer. I know the Paris Olympics seemed like it happened a million years ago, but it was just a few months ago. So there were plenty of interesting storylines that came from those Olympic Games. So we had the pagan, satanic opening ceremonies. We had the United States dominating the medal count again. We had the brilliance of Simone Biles. So Simone Biles is actually pretty awesome when she decides she wants to compete. We had the Australian female breakdancer. Right? Remember her? She got a score of 0.00. That was amazing. Then we had that Turkish Olympic shooter going viral, the dude that just had his hand in his pocket and just was like, yeah, I think I'm okay. Dude got the silver medal. That was amazing. But there was one name that stood out as the most controversial and most talked about Olympic athlete, and that was Imane Khelif, okay? So whom we all were told, reliably informed, was a woman competing in women's boxing for Team Algeria. Okay, so I will do a full breakdown, or actually I did a full breakdown on this entire situation on episode 638 of this podcast. So if you want to hear my full breakdown, go to 638 of this podcast. I talked about this story after I got done blubbering about Roman the Giant dying, so you can go back and listen to that if you want to. But here's the skinny on the story. There were two male boxers that were competing in the women's boxing divisions in the Paris Olympics, and both of them won gold medals. So that's Imane Khelif of Algeria. He won gold in the women's welterweight division. And then Lin Yuting of Taiwan, not Chinese Taipei, that's not a real thing. They won gold, or this male won gold in the women's featherweight division. So neither one of these dudes lost a single round for the entire tournament, which makes a lot of sense because they were dudes fighting women. Both were allowed to compete by the IOC after testing positive for XY chromosomes in the previous year's world championships, okay? Which, of course, means both of them are male. You don't get XY chromosomes unless you are actually male. So I, like many others, was very vocal at the time about my outrage with this. Because, at its core, it's a lot of things all at once. It's unjust. It okays and kind of, just hand waves over violence of men towards women. And also it's going against every standard by which we've come to protect women's sports, right? Because obviously there's a reason why we have separate divisions for women, because it's not the same as competing with the men. So the thing about my vocal and public outrage is that it was met with a lot of negativity from left-wingers or just dumb people, but perhaps I'm repeating myself, a lot of outrage. So I kept getting lectured to by these dunces about me not understanding the nuance of this situation. And the science here, let me explain to you the science about what's happening here. And you really should just wait and see and just kind of see how this all shakes out so that you don't have to, eat crow or pull your foot out of your mouth. But even though I was reliably informed by dilettantes that I was woefully wrong-headed on this issue, there's been some recent breaking news on this story. But before we get there, I want to play a clip of some of my commentary on this subject that I gave back on episode 638. Okay, so this is, if you're listening to episode 638, it's about 47 minutes into the episode, maybe just a few seconds shy of the 47-minute mark. So 47 minutes into episode 638, I said this. Now, some people have said some really dumb things surrounding this, which is, well, have you inspected their crotches to see if they have a penis? At which point I would say, no, you freak, because you don't actually have to subject an athlete to that level of screening. But I've already established that there are real life physical abnormalities where let me talk about that. There are real life conditions, physical abnormalities, genetic abnormalities, where a male would not present as a male according to their crotch. Meaning you would not be able to visibly see a penis and testicles on their crotch. Okay? So for some people, they might have an inverted penis. They might have testes that are still inside their body. There are some people, this is very, very, very rare, they are born with a vagina and a penis and testicles. Okay? These are abnormalities. So you can inspect these two guys' crotches, these two boxers, and come away with the conclusion that they might be female because, perhaps they have a micro penis or an inverted penis or their testicles are still inside their body. So you wouldn't be able to just look at them and tell just by looking at their crotches. But do you know how I can make sure my eyes aren't deceiving me? Again, I could do a genetic test, which they both took, which they both failed. And don't forget, neither of them challenged the results. Their coaches didn't challenge the results. Their families didn't challenge the results. Their countries that they're representing did not challenge the results of the tests. You have to ask yourself why they didn't appeal. Why would they not appeal? Did you guys hear that? Did you hear that? Because I want you to remember that 2-3 minutes there as I talk about this and as I read this, because I want to go to an article by Redux that was released on November the 4th of this year, okay? Which, by the way, the tagline for Redux's website, just so you know, it's not some, right-wing conspiracy website, is Feminist News and Opinion. So this is Redux with 2 X's, Feminist News and Opinion. So let's go to this. Let's just read directly from the story. A shocking new development has emerged in the case of Algerian boxer Imane Khelif after a French journalist reportedly gained access to a damning medical report revealing Khelif has testicles. The news comes months after Khelif seized a gold medal in women's boxing at the Paris Olympics. The report was drafted in June of 2023 via a collaboration between the Kremlin Bicitra Hospital in Paris, France, and the Mohamed Lamine Debaghine Hospital in Algiers, Algeria. Drafted by expert endocrinologists Suma Fadala and Jacques Young, the report reveals that Khelif is impacted by 5-alpha reductase deficiency, a disorder of sexual development that is only found in biological males. Only found in biological males. Okay, let's keep going. This disorder development typically becomes apparent by puberty when 5-alpha adolescents begin to experience signs of masculinization such as muscle growth, hair growth, and an absence of breast tissue development or menstruation. Without access to a proper clinical examination, males with alpha or with 5-alpha may incorrectly believe they are female into adulthood. At the end of October, French journalist Jafar Adia obtained a copy of a thorough physical examination that was conducted on Khelif in order to verify the presence of a disorder of sexual development. According to Adia, the clinical report reveals that an MRI determined that Khelif has no uterus, but instead had internal testicles and a micropenis resembling an enlarged clitoris. A chromosomal test further confirmed that Khelif has an XY karyotype, while a hormone test found that Khelif had a testosterone level typical of males. Adia also noted that doctors suggested Khelif's parents may have been blood relatives. Okay, so I hate to say I told you so. Actually, you know what? No, I don't. Actually, I love it. I love to say that I told you so, especially to all of you cocksure leftists that came at me and called me a bigot and a transphobe. You freaking dum-dums can kick rocks for all I care. So what we all knew the entire time was happening was actually happening. We were told, don't believe your lying eyes, believe what we say because we are your moral betters, and it just wasn't the case. The dude boxer they said wasn't a dude turns out to be a dude because obviously. So you might expect there to be a certain level of outrage from feminists and advocates for women's sports, right? Right about this time. You might expect there to be a groundswell of people demanding that Imane Khelif and Algeria give the gold medal back that they stole, right? You might even expect that there would be a chorus of apologies from leftists for calling people like me bigoted transphobes and haters, right? Well, you might expect all that, but none of that has happened and very, very, very likely will not happen. There has not been significant outrage from feminists and advocates for women's rights and sports. There has not been a significant groundswell of people demanding that Imane Khelif and Algeria give back the gold medal that they stole. And there has not been a chorus of apologies from leftists for trying to destroy people for pointing out basic facts. Okay? This breaking news went into and out of the news cycle like, the Grandpa Simpson gif. Walks in and walks right back out. It just disappeared, right? Fart in the wind. And it did so for two main reasons. One, we have the collective societal memory of a goldfish, right? The Paris Olympics, like I said earlier, may as well have been 200 years ago. And the second is this hit the internet the day before the general election. That Redux article came out on November the 4th. And then we get to November the 5th. On November the 4th, nobody was paying attention to anything else other than the general election. So the story just got completely swallowed up. And so here we sit. Imane Khelif got a gold medal after beating up a bunch of women, and no one is saying boo about it. And I do want to kind of go back to something that I said on that episode as well. So you can go back and listen to it for yourself. I said there's a chance that Imane Khelif and his team and those different people, that they honestly thought that this dude was a chick. But at the previous year's World Championships, they were disabused of that notion because of the presence of XY chromosomes inside of Imane Khelif, right? Because again, remember me saying, I thought, perhaps this dude has a micropenis and internal testicles, but there's nothing about this person that is female. So to a certain degree, you could feel bad for them unless, which seems more likely, these people knew that Imane Khelif was a dude and they're like, we got a competitive advantage here. Algeria isn't exactly a sports powerhouse. I don't even know how often they win gold medals in anything, but they had a chance here to have a celebrity. And if they could just, skate through the fact that it was a man beating up women, then it would have been okay and would have worked out for him, right? So what are some things that we can take away from and learn from this story as I wrap up my commentary on it? The first is, if a leftist is telling you to not believe your lying eyes, you're probably spot on. So if somebody is telling you, yeah, I know that your eyes are telling you this. I know that logic would point you to this outcome, but let me tell you, let me just kind of walk you over here and I will tell you how I view the world. And then you'll just do that too, because I'm better than you, right? So perhaps don't go along with that. Another thing that we can learn is that third and fourth wave feminists are absolutely full of crap, which shouldn't be breaking news to anybody. But again, I do feel the need to kind of break down the different waves. First wave feminism, that was about suffrage, equal rights, right? Second wave feminism was about sexual liberation and, if a man can sleep with anybody without consequences, I should be able to be a woman and do that too. Third wave feminism was more about, we don't actually need men. Men are inferior to women. Women are superior. We don't actually need them. Now we're in fourth wave. They're trying to figure out what exactly all this means because fourth wave feminism, females being dominant and being better doesn't exactly work with the narrative where men can pretend to be women and actually be superior to all women, right? That doesn't exactly work. But where are the third and fourth wave feminists right now that are advocating for all the women that Imane Khelif and Lin Yuting beat up? Where are they? It's incredibly quiet right now. And the last thing here is we can only hope that the major shift we've seen in recent elections, recently with the general election, is an indication that people are really tired of this. People around the globe are just absolutely fed up with this, and we're finally going to move to stop this insanity, right? We've seen a lot of teams in women's volleyball forfeit their matches in the Mountain West against San Diego State because San Diego State has a male that is competing, which, by the way, guys, go search for video of this male volleyball player because the net is lower because women in general cannot jump higher than men in general. Certainly women's volleyball players cannot jump as high as men's volleyball players. And this dude is playing as above the net as you can play, right? If you just look at him, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to not believe my lying eyes because this is clearly a dude playing against women. Thank God that San Diego State didn't win the Mountain West. The NCAA avoided a major issue with them not making the NCAA tournament, or as far as I know, they haven't made the NCAA tournament. But we're seeing teams stand up against this now. We're seeing parents stand up against this now. We're seeing athletic programs and entire schools stand up against this now. And now we've got the Trump administration that is basically saying enough of this nonsense. And it's not just the sports. It's about if you're a child, no, you cannot have puberty blockers. You cannot have your healthy breast tissue cut off. But then eventually, just so you guys can know where this is going, we have to advocate for the same thing for adults. okay? I know some of you have a real big libertarian streak, and I don't want the government telling me what I can and can't do. Actually, you do every single day. If you drive on the roads, you have speed limits, and guess what? If you break the speed limit, you will get pulled over and you'll likely get a ticket. Well, the government can't tell me what to do. Well, they didn't tell you that you could speed or could not speed, right? But they did say, here is the limit, and if we find that you violated this limit, we're going to enforce our laws and give you a just punishment, right? This shouldn't be allowed for adults either. If a 35-year-old man walks into a plastic surgeon's office and says, I want to be a woman, and all I need to do that is for you to shave down my Adam's apple, shave down my cheekbones, and inject me with certain hormones, give me breast augmentation, which basically give me tits, and then, cut off my penis and balls, that should not be legal either. That if you're going to do something like that, well, guess what? You're going to have to go to some private illegal facility, which will be at more risk to your life, which is the risk that you are taking by doing that. So that's where this is going. So I guess we can look forward to that. Hey guys, real quick. As you've heard me describe before, I am incredibly conservative about the supplements that I take. I spent years being terrified of putting different products in my body because I didn't know what they were made with or if it was going to be kind of fly-by-night companies using all kinds of crazy ingredients. So I've always wanted to partner with an American company that only uses the highest quality ingredients, and that's why I want to remind you that we are partnered with Jocko Fuel. Jocko Fuel is Jocko Willing's supplement company that is based here in the United States. So what are some of my favorite products that they make? So they make whey protein powder, and guys, they just released a cookies and cream flavor not that long ago, and it is ridiculously good. Make sure you use it with milk. It makes it even better. They also make clean energy drinks. I finally decided what my favorite was, and that's pink lemonade. That is my favorite of all their flavors. But they also have the best tasting greens powder on the market. I prefer the peach flavor myself. They also make pre-workout and ready-to-drink protein. So I actually mix the ready-to-drink protein in my boys' milk, and they love it. They're constantly like, Dad, banana milk, banana milk. So we got to hook that up in the Thompson household. But I also use their krill oil, fish oil, creatine, vitamin D, and their sleep aids. And guys, they've got new stuff coming out all the time and a bunch of stuff I didn't even have time to mention. Guys, if you take your health and wellness seriously, then you simply can't afford to put cheap and inconsistent supplements inside of your body. Try Origin out today by going to www.jockofuel.com. That's jockofuel.com. Use the promo code UNDAUNTED to get 10% off your order. Again, that's jockofuel.com, promo code UNDAUNTED to get 10% off your order. All right, guys, we've got a bonanza ready, so here we go. Quick hitters. First one here. The greatest archaeological discovery since the Dead Sea Scrolls confirming early worship of Jesus as God. So this is according to the New York Post on November the 19th. If only these floors could talk. Scientists are going gaga over the earliest inscription declaring Jesus is God, claiming that this 1,800-year-old engraving could change our understanding of Christianity. The mosaic is the greatest discovery since the Dead Sea Scrolls, declared Carlos Campo, CEO of the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C., where the theologically significant relic has been housed since July, the Jewish news syndicate reported. Dubbed the Megiddo Mosaic, the 581-foot artifact was originally underneath the floor of the Megiddo prison in Israel in 2005, after which it was excavated in pieces by the Israel Antiques Authority over the course of 4 years. Inscribed on the mosaics are Greek words, the God-loving Akeptos has offered the table to God Jesus Christ as a memorial. Lynn described this as the first physical proclamation of Jesus Christ as God, the Daily Mail reported. The mosaic presents groundbreaking physical evidence of the practices and beliefs of early Christians, including the first archaeological instance of the phrase God Jesus Christ, seconded the exhibition's curator Allegri Savarigio. This is like all these ridiculous names. Sorry, guys. This was significant as the artifact declared JC as God before Christianity became part of the Roman Empire, JNS reported. So here's my big takeaway on this. I love it when archaeology confirms what some of us already knew long ago. So this is saying, again, going back to the article, that this is, the greatest discovery and that this will completely change our understanding of Christianity, which I would say, what exactly is it changing? Because the good news of the gospel is that roughly 2,000 years ago, a 33-year-old Jewish construction worker was killed on a Roman cross at the behest of the Jewish Sanhedrin. He was placed in Joseph of Arimathea's tomb, and 3 days later he walked out of that tomb. And that the apostles, who basically ran away and said they didn't know the guy, all of a sudden were all willing to die for not just what they heard and not what they read, but for what they saw, which was a resurrected Jesus. And it exploded even when the Roman Empire decided that they wanted to stamp out Christianity, when in all actuality, they had no power to do so. But if everything that I just said was just fables, which is what some people believe, what Joe Rogan believes, what people that are just like, yeah, well, it was translated into this language and this language and this language. And, we don't even have accounts of Jesus's life for hundreds and hundreds of years, blah, blah. All these things that are wrong, right? That are just factually inaccurate. If those things were indeed factually accurate, though, archaeology would continue to confirm this. It would continue to say, yep, the Bible says this, but this is clearly what it actually looks like, and this is clearly what actually happened. The Bible is bunk, Christianity is nonsense, we're all just highly evolved chimps, right? But that's not what happens. Every single year, there seem to be new archaeological discoveries that confirm what we've already known and what we already believe and what we have put our faith in, right? And so this is just another one of those instances. So I'm not anti-archaeology by any stretch of the imagination. Don't hear what I'm not saying. But I just love it when archaeology, science, physics, all these things, when they just kind of catch up to what the Bible has already said happened, right? And just think about it. I think someone recently on the Joe Rogan Experience said that the Sahara Desert, only about 5% of the Sahara Desert has been excavated or looked into. But the Sahara Desert used to be lush and full of water and different things. It wasn't a desert. They're literally finding whale bones in the Sahara Desert. Whale bones. How did those get there? Well, because a whale died in that particular piece of land when it was covered in water, obviously. And so there are so many different things. But for you Christians out there that are like, oh my gosh, what if there's an archaeological discovery that goes against Christianity and all those things? What are we going to do? Guys, it's just never going to happen. There's never going to be that archaeological discovery or any gaggle of discoveries that are going to lead to Jesus wasn't actually God and he didn't actually rise from the grave. And the reason is because he is actually God and he did rise from the grave. Amen and hallelujah. All right, next quick hitter here. The Democrats and the mainstream media being absolutely full of crap about Trump being Hitler. So this is according to the BBC on November the 13th. U.S. President Joe Biden and President-elect Donald Trump have met at the White House. Biden invited Trump to meet with him as part of a long-standing tradition signifying the transfer of power as the government changes hands. It's the first time the pair have met since their presidential debate in late June before Biden decided to end his re-election campaign. And then according to Forbes on November the 26th, the federal prosecutions of Donald Trump officially came to an end Tuesday when the federal appeals court dismissed Trump's case for allegedly withholding White House documents after special counsel Jack Smith asked on Monday that the felony charges against Trump be dropped, ending the historic saga. So right to my big takeaway on this one. If Trump were actually Hitler, right? If he were the next iteration, just more tan and worse than Adolf Hitler, you would stop at nothing to keep him from taking power again. And you would be justified in doing so. Again, we just recently had on the writer, producer, and director of the Bonhoeffer film, right? It was a great interview. Go back and check that out. But Dietrich Bonhoeffer was part of a plot to kill Hitler. And if he had followed through on that plot and been successful, he would have been justified in doing so because of the level of evil that Adolf Hitler was perpetrating against image bearers of God. And so if all these Democrats and all these moral betters, these people that are in power, these people in Hollywood, people in the entertainment industry, people in the mainstream media, if they actually thought that he was Hitler, they would not stand for this. It wouldn't matter if he won by 50 million votes in the popular vote and got every single electoral college vote, which again, interesting side note, the only states that Kamala Harris won are the states that do not require a photo ID. Those are literally the only states that she won, so do with that what you will. But if he were actually Hitler, as a public, we could not allow him to take power. But within a week, he's just hobnobbing with Joe Biden at the White House, who's got the biggest poo-eating grin on his face that we've ever seen, right? I would just about guarantee you that Joe Biden and Jill Biden both voted for Donald Trump because, he got shivved in the back and pushed off a cliff by Kamala Harris and company, right? He's just like, yeah, suck it. This is what happens whenever I'm the only guy that could have beaten Donald Trump and y'all got rid of me. So, hey, F around and find out. But in this exact moment, again, you can't just be a mainstream media member and be like, all right, well, we're just going to see what we can do to be on Trump's good side so we can get more coverage. If you run one of these big companies like Amazon or Meta or any of these types of things, you're not just going to kind of, talk a little bit more softly about Donald Trump and all these different things. No, if he's Hitler, you stop him. If he's actually Hitler, you kill him. You get him out. You get him out of the gene pool. You put the country in complete disarray because we will be able to sift through the ashes way faster than if Hitler actually were to take power. But again, this is like the here's your sign, most obvious of obvious points podcast, I guess. Trump was never actually Hitler. Trump is not a fascistic dictator. You know how we know that to be true? Because he's been in office before. And all the things that you said he would do, he didn't do then. And the odds are very likely that he won't do them this time. You guys are full of crap. All right, next quick hitter here. The most effective Trump political ad of the 2024 election cycle. And so there were a lot of different ads that came out. And again, I live in Oklahoma, so we didn't get a lot of those ads. But gosh, if you lived in North Carolina or Georgia or Pennsylvania or Wisconsin or Michigan or Nevada or Arizona, you were just inundated with these political ads. But there was one ad that they put out, the Trump campaign put out, and it did so incredibly well that they dumped, as far as I understand it, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of more dollars into this ad because it just really hit the bullseye. So I'm actually going to show you the ad here.
Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners.
Surgery.
For prisoners.
For prisoners. Every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access.
Hell no, I don't want my taxpayer dollars going to that.
Kamala supports transgender sex changes in jail with our money.
Kamala even supports letting biological men compete against our girls in their sports. Kamala is for they, them. President Trump is for you.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
All right, guys, so this ad was not just ran in swing states. This ad was ran all over the country. It was ran in New York. It was ran in California. It was ran everywhere. And the thing is a lot of these ads can, really, really bend the truth, or some just straight up lie, but this is all legit. Kamala Harris advocated for inmates and for illegal immigrants to get sex change surgeries. She was okay with putting men in women's prisons. All they had to do was wear makeup and a wig, right, and paint their nails. And all of a sudden they could get access. Even sex offenders, rapists, could get access to women's prisons, right? And so, again, some of the language can be real kitschy, but ultimately Kamala Harris is for they, them, and Donald Trump is at least advocating publicly for the generalized public. So this was very, very well received. And again, I think it goes back to what I talked to with the Imane Khelif situation. I think Americans and, let's just go right to the big takeaway. I think Americans and perhaps Westerners writ large are done with the whole trans nonsense. I think we're done with it. We're done tut-tutting it. We're done being quiet and polite about it and hoping it goes away because, again, that's what a lot of conservatives do and a lot of conservative Christians do is we just like, okay, well, let's not get too loud about this. Let's not push. This isn't the battle to fight. This isn't the hill to die on. Let's, leave some powder for tomorrow's battle. But it became apparent that the Democrats and the leftists were just going to continue to push things like this. And it took us being like, no, not only no, but hell no, for something like this to kind of be stopped in its tracks because there are a lot of political, Democrats and leftists and things like that. They're trying to distance themselves from this whole thing because you have to make them give the affirmative case as to why we should give 13-year-olds puberty blockers. So life has been one way for all of time. Men are men, women are women, boys are boys, girls are girls. And now you're advocating saying that's actually not the case. We have a new understanding of gender and the spectrum that is supposedly inside of the mammalian dichotomy when it comes to sex. But you've done nothing to prove why that's the case. Nothing to prove why we should actually do this. Again, I don't have to defend my position. You do. You're the one wanting to, completely change our understanding of all of this. And you haven't done anything to prove that. And also, we should note the difference between that ad, that Trump ad, and two of the most popular Kamala Harris ads from this entire area or this entire election cycle. There was that ad with kind of the MAGA husband telling his wife, who's wearing an American flag, like, make sure you do the right thing. And then she goes to the voting booth and then she makes eye contact with another woman. And then she votes for Kamala Harris. And then she comes out and the husband's like, did you do the right thing? She's like, I sure did. And so she literally lies to her conservative husband. So that was a good ad for Democrats, lying to your spouse. And then there was another ad showing this guy that would somehow not be able to access porn if Donald Trump were elected president, which I paid really close attention to this election cycle. I don't know that I ever heard Donald Trump or anyone on his team mention, we're going to get rid of access to porn, right? I don't know that we heard that, but those are two very, very popular ads. So you have Donald Trump being like, hey, enough of this trans nonsense. It's not a real thing. I'm going to advocate for you. Whereas Democrats are like, hey, let's lie to our spouses, and gosh, wouldn't it be terrible if we couldn't jerk off while watching porn anymore? So that doesn't tell you everything that you need to know about the differences between the two parties, but it certainly does tell you a lot. Our next quick hitter here, Oklahoma becoming the first state in the nation to purchase Bibles explicitly for in-school, in-class use. So this is according to the Oklahoman in late November. State Schools Superintendent Ryan Walters said Thursday that more than 500 Bibles have been purchased for Oklahoma public school classrooms. In a news release, Walters said the Bibles would be used in advanced placement government classrooms across the state. He said the move represented the first in the nation Bible purchase explicitly for use in schools as an academic and literary resource, and described the purchase as the first step towards providing Bibles for every classroom in the state. The purchase was separate from a prior request for proposal issued by the Oklahoma Department of Education for 55,000 Bibles. So, big takeaway on this one. A lot of people hate this move, which, by the way, the Oklahoman is a left-wing newspaper here, even in the state of Oklahoma, where every county voted red. But a lot of people have expressed that they hate this move. But none of these people can actually elucidate a coherent argument against it. So why exactly should the most important book in human history have no place in a public school classroom? Again, you have to make the affirmative case for keeping that from happening, right? But these same people would advocate for a book detailing minors giving blowjobs to adults and how that should be in the school libraries. And that's kind of their hiding point, where it's like, hey, it's not like in the classroom. We're not like assigning it to all the kids. It's just in the library for whatever kid, finds it and wants to look at literal drawings of kids giving kids blowjobs and kids giving adults blowjobs. So again, make the affirmative case for why we shouldn't have the Holy Bible in the classroom, but we should have filth like that, porn like that in the school libraries. Again, I haven't heard a coherent argument against it. And so I do have a side note here for people, because we're seeing a lot of this, because West Virginia and Oklahoma were the only two states where every single county in both of those states voted red. And so there are a lot of liberal Oklahomans, liberal Okies, that feel like, hey, you know what? This is terrible. This is backwards. We should do something about this, whatever. So I have a message for those Okies. To those Okies that hate this and hate the backwards morals of our state, and the fact that every county voted for Donald Trump, and most by a wide margin, you don't have to live here. You don't have to live here. That is one of the amazing things about the federalist system in America. You can live in 50 different states and still live in America, right? Now, some of you just flat out hate America, and yet you don't even try to move and live somewhere else. So that tells us a little bit something about how full of crap you are. But if you hate it here in Oklahoma, like I saw someone posted a picture of the results from the state of Oklahoma and a picture of the results from the state of Massachusetts. Massachusetts, every single county voted blue, some of them widely blue. Well, what exactly is keeping you here in Oklahoma? If it is so horrible living here, if you just hate the majority of Oklahomans and the way they vote so much, then why are you continuing to expose yourself to this? Move. I'd love for you to stay. Like, if you'd like to stay, if you've been an Okie for life, remain an Okie until you're buried. But if you can't deal with it here, go somewhere else. And I would say the same thing to conservatives in Massachusetts. As opposed to sitting there and lamenting and complaining and all those different things, if you're not going to fight back and if you're not going to create real change in your state, then just leave. We've seen a mass exodus from left-wing states like California, Oregon, Washington, Illinois, New Jersey, New York. These people are flooding red states. They're moving to Arizona. They're moving to Texas. They're moving to Montana. They're moving to Tennessee. They're moving to Florida. And for good reason, because they're going from hellholes with high taxation for crappy services, and they're going to freer states. And so, again, stop pissing and moaning and complaining. If you really mean it, do something about it and get the hell out. All right, next one here. The illegal immigrant that brutally murdered Laken Riley escaping real justice. So this is according to CNN on November the 20th. A man accused of killing Georgia nursing student Laken Riley while she was out for a run earlier this year was found guilty Wednesday and sentenced to life without parole in a case that reignited the national debate over immigration and crime. Jose Ibarra, a 26-year-old undocumented migrant, otherwise known as an illegal immigrant, from Venezuela, was convicted of a total of 10 charges, including murder, kidnapping with bodily injury, aggravated assault with intent to rape, and tampering with evidence. So, as we look at this story, obviously, Laken Riley has become kind of a face of a movement, which, again, Laken Riley isn't the only person that this has happened to. There have been illegal immigrant criminals that have come to this country and have absolutely made life hell for legalized Americans or for naturalized or natural Americans of this country. But I do want to give you an idea before I finish my commentary of the type of woman that Laken Riley was before she was brutally beaten to death. I mean, what was she, 20, 21 years old? She was a very, very young lady. So I'm actually going to read to you the last journal entry that she ever made in her personal journal. The reason why we have this is because it was read in court by her stepfather. Okay. So it's a brutal video. Like, again, I didn't even know Laken Riley. And it's going to be hard for me to read this, but the letter is addressed to my future husband. Again, the last journal entry she ever made before she was brutally beaten to death with a rock. To my future husband, I want you to know that I'm thinking about you. I'm working every day to become the best wife I can be, working through my current relationships to best prepare me for ours and our kids one day. I'm focusing on God and what He defines as a faithful Christian life, and so that I can best embody those characteristics. I pray that you know that it is with my full faith and trust in God that I know this relationship has been handcrafted by Him. I pray that we continue to glorify the Lord, prioritize Him in every aspect of our lives, and raise our future family, and be God-fearing Christians as well, and pray God is the center of our relationship as it is a gift from Him. I thank Him for you before I even know you. We can't wait to love you in the best way I know how for the rest of our lives. I pray you know and feel the importance of my love and hopes for our relationship, no matter what challenges we face. I pray our trust in God and love for one another overrules the obstacle. May our relationship last forever. Your future wife, Laken. Just a brutal, brutal thing, right? Again, you can watch her stepfather read that. It's just absolutely, absolutely heartbreaking. So to my big takeaway on this one, true justice in this case would be for Ibarra to be executed by having his head caved in by a rock. Because from the ME's report, we see that Laken Riley fought against Jose Ibarra for, I think it was 18 minutes, if I remember off the top of my head. She fought and fought and fought this guy until he just completely overpowered her, beat her to death with a rock. But instead, Jose Ibarra, who shouldn't even be in this country, is going to be kept alive, presumably for decades, right? Because he's 26 years old. He could live 60, 70 years. And he's going to live in a U.S. federal prison at the expense of the U.S. taxpayer. That is not justice at all. Not justice at all. Guys like Jose Ibarra, guys like that love prison. These guys thrive in prison. Sociopathic, narcissistic, psychopathic, murderous type of guys, gangbangers. These guys thrive in prison. Would they rather be out? Right? I'm sure they would rather have their freedom, but they can be a big dog in prison and just not in the real regular society. But this is not a punishment. Prison for life without the possibility of parole. So that guy's going to be getting 3 hots in a cot every single day for the rest of his horrible life. Again, if we were a real country and if we took justice seriously, he would be deported, right? It would have been deported in the first place, but since he committed the crime here, we should execute him speedily. I've said this before. People are like, oh, the death penalty is not really a deterrent. Well, part of the reason why it's not a deterrent, which it's not just a foregone conclusion that it's not a deterrent, but let's just assume that's true. Part of it is because these guys aren't executed quickly. Guys are on death row for 10, 20, 30 years, longer than that, right? If we were a real country, and if we were serious about justice, once you were convicted and sentenced to death, you would get one appeal, and when that appeal was over, you'd be executed at dawn. So I think Jose Ibarra, even though all of the evidence points to the fact that he was the guy that killed Laken Riley, they don't even have a lead for anyone else who could have killed Laken Riley, he should get his one appeal. I think that's just. Get your one appeal, but after the gavel comes down, it's like, nope, you're still guilty. You die tomorrow. Right? That would be justice. This is not. I absolutely hate this for Laken Riley's family because they're going to be members of Laken Riley's family that will die decades before Jose Ibarra does. That's not justice. Our next quick hitter here, the Archbishop of Canterbury okaying gay sex while simultaneously protecting pedophiles in the Church of England. Here we go. This is according to the Washington Times on November the 11th. Archbishop of Canterbury Justin Welby is facing mounting pressure to step down after a report revealed years of institutional cover-ups by the Church of England, allowing a known abuser to operate unchecked for years. The 251-page independent review divulged the details of the church's investigation into John Smythe, or Smith, not sure, we'll just go with Smythe, a former church volunteer who preyed on young men and boys at Christian camps. Smythe, who died in 2018, is believed to have subjected at least 115 victims to what the report calls appalling sexual violence over 5 decades, something that Archbishop Welby was made aware of in 2013 when he became the church's top prelate. Despite warnings as far back as the early 1980s, church officials took no substantive action to stop his abuse, according to the report. When Archbishop Welby became aware of the situation, he failed to take sufficient steps in reporting Smythe to police, the report states. And then we have, according to the Christian Post on October the 27th, Christians across the United Kingdom are calling for Archbishop of Canterbury Justin Welby's resignation following his comments supporting sexual intimacy and same-sex relationships. They argue that his statements represent a fundamental departure from the Church of England's doctrine on marriage and sexual ethics. Welby stated in a recent podcast interview that sexual intimacy is morally acceptable in, quote, stable, committed, and faithful relationships, unquote, regardless of gender. And this sparked backlash from evangelicals within the denomination who accuse him of openly disregarding church doctrine. So, big drink of water. Big takeaway. I could take a shot at Anglicans right now, but I'll just leave that alone. I instead have a question that we should all ponder. Why is it that powerful men and powerful quote-unquote Christian positions, like in the Church of England or the Catholic Church or something like that, why do they keep signaling sexual libertinism, so that's, sexual promiscuity, while simultaneously covering up homosexual pedophilia? Again, I'll ask that again. Why is it that powerful men and powerful Christian positions keep signaling sexual libertinism, which is sexual promiscuity, while simultaneously covering up homosexual pedophilia? So we have Archbishop Justin Welby, we have Pope Francis, and we have past archbishops of the Church of England and people within the Catholic Church that have signaled at least a softening approach to people that identify as same-sex attracted. People that are actively sinning according to any biblical ethic as it pertains to the right ordering of sexual behavior. Why do guys like Justin Welby and Pope Francis keep doing that? Now, I actually have a pretty good guess as to why. Okay? This is going to be somewhat controversial, but hey, it is what it is. We'll see how it lands. My contention, and I'm not exactly going out on a limb here, that many of these men that are in these upper echelons of like the Anglican Church, Catholic Church, are homosexuals themselves. These are same-sex attracted individuals that have engaged in sex acts with other men and probably continue to engage in sex acts with other men, up to and including male children, as we've seen plenty of documentation on, right? What better way to cover that up than to continue allowing the behavior in your midst while publicly decrying anyone that opposes such behavior? So we're not exactly getting full-throated, no pun intended, in endorsements from Welby and Pope Francis, especially Pope Francis. He's kind of a chameleon in a lot of ways. He's using some Genesis 3 serpent styles of communication in order to really muddy the waters around what the Catholic Church, which he is supposedly the head of, believes as it pertains to same-sex attraction and acting out in a same-sex way. But again, why do these men keep hiding that behavior? Why do we see in the Catholic Church, Anglican Church, things like that, that men or little boys keep being ushered around to these different men? And when a man gets caught and there's a little bit of heat in that particular area, they just move him to another parish or move him to another church or move him to another country. But they don't actually allow for justice to be served. Part of it could be institutional arrogance, where they're like, we're the Catholic Church. We're not going to go, where are we supposed to go? To the local Italian, police station and tell them, no, we can handle this. Oh, we're the Church of England. We can handle this. We don't need to have Scotland Yard come in here and start messing about, right? But again, I think part of the reason is because they want this behavior in their midst, because that's kind of how it works. If you want to stop a behavior in your midst, you do what you can to actually stop it. I know, breaking news. But if there's something negative, if there's something dark, if there's something satanic happening around you, especially guys like you that are listening to this show, you move to stop those behaviors. If you're actually serious about getting rid of it, you don't just kind of play nice with it. You don't move it around. You don't shuffle the chairs on the deck of the Titanic, right? You do everything you can to eradicate it. You want to stamp out the head of the serpent, and you want to stamp out evil. And men like Justin Welby and Pope Francis aren't doing that. You got to wonder why. All right, next one here. Pastor John Piper, just in case you guys thought I wasn't going to go after evangelicals, referring to Trump's reelection as evil. Okay, now, as we all should have learned from Kirk Lazarus from Tropic Thunder, everyone knows you never go full retard. Everyone knows that. I guess someone should have told John Piper that. Okay, now, I really like John Piper. I really like a lot of people that really like John Piper. Okay, I like his writings. I like his sermons. I like what he's done for Christendom, Desiring God, the website, all that. That's all good. But even geniuses are morons sometimes, right? I started the show with all of my moronic takes as it pertained to the general election, and I'm the furthest thing from a genius, right? So that should give the rest of us hope that even really, really, really smart people like John Piper make mistakes. So here's a tweet that was posted by John Piper the day after Trump was reelected. Here's the tweet. Presidential election results. Having delivered us from one evil, God now tests us with another. The Lord your God is testing you to know whether you love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. Deuteronomy 13:3. So here's my big takeaway on this John Piper thing. I think a lot of people are rushing to defend this statement because they're huge fans of Piper's preaching and writing. Okay? The main argument that they are making is that Piper was simply stating that no matter who won, they were going to be evil no matter what, and ultimately we have to rely on God because people are fallible, and so we can't put our faith in people. Now, even if we ignore the fact that Piper did not explicitly say that, right? You're putting words in Piper's mouth. I'm not. I'm just reading his words. So even if we ignore that, you've got to realize one huge thing which completely destroys that ridiculous argument. I don't remember Piper posting anything like this in 2020 when Biden won, or in 2016 when Trump won the first time and no one knew what he was going to do, or in 2012 or in 2008 when Barack Obama won, or in 2004 and 2000 when George W. Bush won, or in 1996 or 1992 when Bill Clinton won, and on and on and on I could go. Now, we didn't have Twitter for all that time, but certainly people would have listened to what John Piper, the great John Piper, was going to say. So either this is a completely new revelation for Piper, right? It just hit him like a ton of bricks on November the 6th, or he bought the line that Trump is literally Hitler and has begun to kowtow to liberalism, which, again, that wouldn't be too hard to do in a state like Minnesota, frankly. But what exactly was the best case scenario for him posting that tweet? Because he didn't have to post a tweet. He didn't have to give his thoughts. He could have given a fully contextualized argument and thought process from the pulpit just a few days after the election results were finalized, right? Or actually, it was clear that Donald Trump was going to be the president-elect. But instead, he chose to do this. And again, to all you people that are out there just want to defend John Piper and, you know, your blood pressure is coming up just hearing me talk bad about your boy, guys make mistakes, man. Like, this is a huge L. Like, this was an unforced error. This was not something that he needed to do. And again, I don't remember him saying, would he have said the same thing if Kamala Harris had gotten in? Because in his state of Minnesota, Kamala Harris was raising money to get agitators, people that were destroying property and violating people's personal sovereignty rights and their physical health during the George Floyd riots. In his state, did he give a big, announcement and proclamation via Twitter about the evil that would have befallen us if Kamala Harris would have gotten into the White House? Do we get a tweet, from Deuteronomy or something like that saying about the number of children that would have been slaughtered under a Harris-Walz administration, the most pro-abortion administration that we would have ever seen in the history of this country, with no close second? Would we have possibly seen any decrying from him of the different wars that would have continued and or started under a Harris-Walz administration because they would just be a furtherance of the paper tiger administration of the Bidens? But we didn't see any of that. But Orange Hitler wins with wide margins and a mandate from Americans. We're tired of how things are going right now. Please get us back to prominence and out of this madness. And all of a sudden we have to hear a lecture from John Piper about evil. Save it. All right, next one here. A Republican lawmaker who is also a rape survivor introduces a bill that would ban men wearing womanface from being able to access women's bathrooms. So this is according to Libs of TikTok on Twitter. Breaking. Representative Nancy Mace introduces a measure to ban men from women's bathrooms on Capitol Hill. Sarah McBride, who is the first transgender member of Congress, blasted the attempt as far right-wing extremism. So, Sarah McBride, this is a dude that likes to dress up like a woman, and he gets off on getting free access to women's spaces because he's very likely an autogynephilic freak. So, autogynephilia is where an adult male is sexually aroused at the sight of himself as a female. So, he'll put on a dress, lipstick, long eyelashes, a wig and all that, and he'll get an erection looking at himself in the mirror and then will likely pleasure himself to that image. That's what autogynephilia is. That's likely who Sarah McBride is. It's very, very likely. But somehow, the voters of Delaware, right? I don't know how many people from Delaware listen to the show, but my God, you saw fit to elect a male with clear mental illness to represent you guys in Congress. Nice job, guys. But the backlash to Nancy Mace and to the people that support her, it's simply strange. I don't know if it's stunning, but it's definitely strange because Democrats and leftists are claiming that this action is discriminatory. To which I would say, yeah, absolutely. It is discriminatory. Like, people use the word discriminate or discriminatory as if discrimination in and of itself is wrong in all cases, which is obviously ridiculous because we all discriminate every single day. I'm not the first person to point this out. We discriminate against one restaurant by going to another. We discriminate against one team that we choose to root for versus all the other teams in that league that we could choose to root for. So in this case, we should absolutely discriminate against men playing dress up as women and wanting to have access to women's restrooms, right? Again, the people that are claiming that we need to make a change here are the ones that have the burden of proof. You have to make the affirmative case. There's never been a problem in human history with women going to the women's bathroom and with men going to the men's bathroom. We've never had any consternation about this. There's never been a kerfuffle about it. Boys playing on boys' teams. Girls playing on girls' teams. That's always made sense until recently. However, Democrats want, and you know, they want us to upset the apple cart about this whole issue, but they have nothing to show it as an argument or even a vaguely coherent thought as to why we should change the way things have always been done to accommodate the fringes of society. Because no matter what data you look at, this is a very, very, very fringe minority of people that either genuinely believe because of mental illness that they are the opposite sex, or they don't actually believe it. They just get off on it like this Sarah McBride person. But this is so fringe, and yet this is like a central point of the Democratic Party right now. So my big takeaway here is fourth wave feminism, which I've already talked about a little bit, might be the last wave of feminism. We can only hope. Because women's rights and transgenderism simply cannot mix. So I don't know if we're going to see a fifth wave of feminism, okay? Because these two groups, these are warring factions at this point. When you have a leftist, like I just forgot the gal that wrote all the Harry Potters. So she's a very left-wing woman. When she is not in your camp, because she's a feminist, she's a dyed-in-the-wool feminist. And this woman is seen as a TERF, right? What's that? Trans exclusionary radical feminist, something like that. But the reason she is that is because her brain functions properly. And she knows that if a male thinks they're a woman or just gets off on seeing themselves as a woman, that does not, in fact, in reality, make them a woman. So we're seeing first, second, third wave feminism kind of smashing up against fourth wave feminism, and it's not really going well. And I'll just end my commentary with this. If Sarah McBride continues to push this issue, which, again, he's indicated that he's going to kind of relent, at least for now, because it's not super popular. But if he continues to push this issue, that'll sure take a lot of balls. Just saying. All right, next one here. Italy banning couples from going abroad for surrogacy. So this is according to the BBC on October the 16th. Italy has made it illegal for its citizens to go abroad to have a baby via surrogacy. The move extends a ban on the practice inside of the country to also include those who seek it out in places where it is legal, like the United States or Canada. Those who break the law could face up to 2 years in prison and fines of up to 1 million euros. I think that's euros, whatever. Well, about $1 million. The law proposed by the Italy's far-right governing party is seen by critics to target LGBTQ couples who are not allowed to adopt or use IVF in the country. Surrogacy is when a woman carries a pregnancy for another couple or individual, usually due to fertility issues or because they are men in same-sex relationships. The law passed by 84 votes to 58 in Italy's Senate on Wednesday. So big takeaway on this one. This is a good thing. And more countries should follow suit. I don't know that they will, but they should. Because we need to stop acting like the commodification of a woman's womb is a good thing. Because you could even see from this article, which BBC is very, very left-wing, surrogacy is when a woman carries a pregnancy for another couple or individual, usually due to fertility issues or because they are men in same-sex relationships. Surrogacy now is being used as a tactic for narcissistic same-sex couples who can't biologically have children no matter what we do, no matter what hormones we shoot them up with, no matter what plastic surgeries we give them. They're being used, surrogacy is being used so that these people can have children. And I don't think these people should be allowed to have children, right? I'm open to hearing arguments about adoption into same-sex relationships. I ultimately am not for that either, but I'm at least open to hearing the arguments because those babies are here living in the world outside of the womb right now, and they don't have homes. They're in the foster system. So again, I'm ultimately against same-sex couples being able to adopt, but I'm at least, willing to hear those arguments. I'm not willing to hear the arguments on this because we have gay dudes that are looking through a catalog trying to find, women via the catalog. Oh, this woman's pretty tall. And oh, she did good on her ACT. And oh, blue eyes. We like blue eyes. And brown hair. Yeah, we were hoping for blonde, but we kind of like all the rest of these things. And then they swirl their sperm together after they jerk off into a cup. And then they put it together with an egg. And then they put that fertilized egg inside of a woman who has commodified her body and her womb so that these narcissistic gay dudes can have a baby. And everyone's cool with that. We're all cool with that. We think that's a good thing. We're making these designer babies so that they can be raised in a same-sex household. Like, again, what is the affirmative case for something like that? Again, I think you can cogently make a affirmative case for why same-sex couples should be able to adopt babies or adopt children that are currently existing in the world outside the womb. But what is the affirmative case for allowing these men to design a baby and rent a woman's womb? Because this baby, because of how God wired us, is connecting with the mother as it grows and develops inside of that woman. There is a connection that is so astonishing that scientists and philosophers can't even really begin to describe the deep level of connection. And if you don't believe me, guys, go talk to your wife if she's had kids, right? Go talk to her. What is that connection like? It's going to be hard for her to describe it as well. But we're okay with women just having the baby ripped out of their womb, right? Or taken out of their womb or out of their belly and just walked into the next room and handed to a couple of gay dudes? Guys, this should not be legal. I am all for this. Congratulations. Great job to the country of Italy. So a couple more left here. The WNBA players signaling a strike even after a $40 million loss from last season. So this is according to the New York Post last month. While the WNBA is getting sellout crowds for the finals between the New York Liberty and Minnesota Lynx, the league's owners will not be making a return on their investment for the foreseeable future, sources close to the situation said. The NBA owns nearly 60% of the league. When one combines the NBA owners' personal stakes in the WNBA teams and the WNBA itself, the amount rises to 75%, a source with direct knowledge of the numbers said. The NBA team owners have invested hundreds of millions in the WNBA since the 1996 formation, per sources. The WNBA owes the NBA so much, we won't see any windfall for years, an NBA team executive told the Post. This season, the WNBA will lose $40 million, a bit better than the $50 million forecast and reported by several media outlets months ago, but still a loss, sources said. But the players are expected to opt out of their current collective bargaining contract. And just so you know, they did. They opted out of their collective bargaining agreement, and so they are essentially on strike unless they figure out something with their pay. So, the WNBA has never once, as a league, made a profit. Never once. Not since they were created in the mid-90s. They are only in existence because they are heavily subsidized and supported by the men's league. And these dum-dums are willing to go on strike as they demand higher pay. They demand it. Their main argument for higher pay is the same one we get from all these women's groups, right? That want to be paid as much as the men. That's it. It's essentially, well, look how much the men are making. And it's not equal because they have penises and we have vaginas, and that's our only difference. But everything else is somehow the exact same. Okay? So here's the thing about the men, specifically in the NBA. The NBA, these men, they make Scrooge McDuck money. The amount of money the NBA makes, even though the product is junk. I mean, if you watch the NBA now, it's just three-pointer, drive to the lane, foul, call, as long as the person's an all-star. And that's the game, right? But even with that, they make a ridiculous amount of money. Now, the WNBA players are arguing that they need their fair share of the funds as well. Look how much the men are making. We should make the same. But again, because this is how money works, you can't get paid with money that doesn't exist. People have broken down the numbers before, but if the women in the WNBA actually wanted their fair share, they would actually be paying to play. Because if you break down what the league actually makes, and then you extrapolate that down to the number of players that are actually rostered on WNBA teams, these women would have to pay money, thousands of dollars, to actually play in this league, and yet they get to make money. So some might say they should actually just be thankful. They should be thankful that they get to be a professional athlete, even though nobody actually wants to pay to see them, and that they're ran by a league. They're basically ran by chimps. Like the people that are running this league, they're just basically like monkeys that are just, mashing stuff. They're just like, I mean, you could basically, I don't know what you could do to fix a league like this, right? These people, these executives that run this league, males and females, it doesn't matter. They're just not good at this. And part of it is because people don't want the product. And guys, the league is so poorly run that they couldn't even take advantage of Chick Michael Jordan, who was just dropped in their laps this year. Caitlin Clark, she's the only women's basketball player, maybe ever in history. I'm trying to think. There's, Cheryl Swoops and Lisa Leslie. And then, who are the other household names, right? Diana Taurasi, right? But nobody was stopping what they were doing on a Wednesday night to watch Diana Taurasi, whatever team she played for, playing against some other team that you didn't even know existed 5 seconds before the game started, right? And they get Caitlin Clark, the only gal that anyone's ever been like, wow, she's incredible. This is great to watch. She's like, Steph Curry, but a female, and they still couldn't make a profit. Just stunning. So my big takeaway on this is you can only shine up a turd so much, right? And I know some of you out there, maybe you're a women's basketball fan, maybe you got girls that play basketball and all that, but you just got to be real. Like, basketball is an explosive game, and typically females are not explosive athletes. The most explosive thing in basketball is the dunk, the alley-oop, the breakaway, those types of things. But women's basketball is layups and jump shots. That's it. It's layups and jump shots. Right? What was it? Brittany Griner could actually dunk, but did she ever actually dunk in a game? I'm trying to remember. Like, I think the lane was completely cleared, right? And they just kind of allowed her to dunk the ball. And even in those circumstances, she didn't always dunk the ball, right? So the most explosive thing you can do, right? The dunk in basketball is the home run in baseball. It's the most explosive thing you can do. It may not be your favorite thing, but it is generally the most important thing. But in general, men just don't like watching women's basketball, and women don't like watching sports. Again, in general, men don't like watching women's basketball. Women don't like watching sports. And so all these women, especially all these feminists, are like, there should be equal pay and there should be all these things. They're not watching the WNBA either. And so somehow it's my fault as a man that loves watching sports, that in general, I'm not going to stop what I'm doing to watch women's basketball. Again, it just kind of is what it is. All right, last quick hitter here. The city of Los Angeles becoming a sanctuary city. So this is according to Reuters on November the 7th. All right, get through the article. Okay, here we go. The Los Angeles City Council on Tuesday unanimously passed a sanctuary city ordinance to protect immigrants living in the city, a policy that would prohibit the use of city resources and personnel to carry out federal immigration enforcement. The move by the Southern California city, the second most populated city in the United States, after New York City, follows President-elect Donald Trump's vow to carry out mass deportations on immigrants. The ordinance codifies the protection of migrants in municipal law. Councilmember Paul Krikorian, another crazy name, said the measure addresses the need to ensure that our immigrant community here in Los Angeles understands that we understand their fear. The city is home to 1.3 million migrants, council members said, without specifically identifying how many entered the country legally. But that's the whole point. The whole time in this article, they're talking about migrants and, oh, it's just these migrants. It's these people that have just migrated here. The entire point is about whether or not they migrated here legally. We are a country made up of migrants. When my ancestors came over here from Ireland and Scotland, and also I'm Choctaw Indian, they were already here. But when they came over, it was legal to just enter through a normal port of entry. What's happening with the majority of these cases is people are coming into our country illegally. So definitionally, they are criminals. Whether they have a prior criminal background or whether they've done anything violent in their lives is not what we're talking about, because we're just trying to determine, is this person here legally? Are they legally allowed to be here, or are they not? That is the entire point. But I do want to go to my big takeaway here. When the mass deportations start under the Trump administration, which every indication is that that will actually happen, just don't be swayed by the stories of quote unquote humanity, because the major networks and the major left-wing news organizations, they are ready. Their camera batteries are charged. They are ready to gather pictures and video of families being deported where the kids are crying and the women are crying and, oh, this horrible situation. And they're going to find that one family where the guy is, just an upstanding member of the community and all those different things and how he should stay here and all that. Just don't let that sway you, because at the end of the day, this is about who, as a country, as a sovereign country, who we collectively agree on should be able to be here. And the overwhelming majority of Americans think that we should have legal immigration. That's like almost a 100% thing, that we should have legal immigration to this country. But also, like 3/4 of Americans agree that we shouldn't have these levels of illegal immigration, where we don't know who's coming in. We have no idea what their past is like. Are they one of the prisoners that was let out of the Venezuelan prison and sent north to our border? Someone from one of their mental institutions just sent north to us to deal with? Is it one of those people? Or is it just a guy that's willing to do whatever it takes to take care of his family, and he's going to work his butt off, and if given the opportunity, will create a business and create wealth for other families? Is it that type of person? As a country, we want to make that determination. We don't want a wide open border to make that determination. We don't want coyotes or these different groups in Mexico and the cartels. We don't want them making that decision for us. Okay? So when they start out with mass deportating criminals, known gang members, terrorists, just know that they're going to find people, and they're going to find stories that pull at your heartstrings. That's one of the few things that they can do to start chipping away at the edges of the mandate that came from the American people, which said, enough of this, get these people out of here. Now, again, as a Christian, there's plenty of things that talk about the sojourner and how we should take care of people. And yes, of course, that's true. But a biblical mandate obviously also is that God is pro-borders, right? Go back to Josh Howerton's sermon that he did about how Jesus would vote. We have scriptural basis for God being pro-borders for sovereign countries. And if your border is wide open and anyone can go to and from and come across it, then you don't actually have a border. And for millennia, people groups and countries have decided to protect their borders with walls, with soldiers, with the threat of violence. And yet, modern squishy Christians will say, well, we shouldn't do that. But isn't it so interesting? A lot of these modern squishy Christians, they aren't living in areas that are being destroyed by the mass deportation of people that we don't even know who they are. They're not living in southwestern Texas. They're not living on the Arizona border. They're not working at the hospitals where you as a tax-paying American can't even get in to be seen in the emergency room because illegal immigrants who don't have health insurance, every time they get the sniffles or a rolled ankle, they just go to the emergency room because they know it's going to be paid for them, right? So you don't have to deal with any of these issues. You're not a school teacher that half of your class are illegal immigrants from Central or South America. They speak zero English. And so they're getting a ton of attention, whereas the American students that understand English are basically getting no instruction whatsoever, or they're being given, side assignments or, hey, watch this video real quick. You don't live in those areas. And yet you want to tell people like me that are pro these mass deportations that somehow we're off, that we're not loving the least among us. Well, it's not very loving to the poor people in those communities, to those American communities, that they can't get the services they need because of this influx of migrants. Okay? Again, this is not going to be a nice and easy, clean-cut situation. It's just a situation that we're in, and we got to fix it. All right, guys, that'll do it for today. Before we go, We're going to do a quick resilience boost at Undaunted.Life. Our mission is equipping men to push back darkness with content that forges spiritual, mental, and physical resilience. We got the link there, Undaunted.Life/Dominion. Go there, put in your application for the Dominion program. Also, we had a link to our donation page. We are a donation-based ministry. Come in there, hook us up, help us to get this word out to everybody all over the globe. And then we've got links to everything that we talked about in the quick hitter section. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Wherever you're listening to this, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a positive 5-star review. If you want me to come speak live at your event or on your podcast, just shoot me an email to info@Undaunted.Life. That's info@Undaunted.Life. Follow us on Instagram and like us on Facebook, and check out our website for everything else, including how to donate to keep more content like this coming your way. Just go to www.Undaunted.Life. And as always, we want to thank the band Holy Name for allowing us to use their music for our content. The music on this podcast is their song Perpetua, which is off their self-titled debut album on Face Down Records. The links are in the description. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Remember, keep pushing back darkness, keep forging spiritual, mental, and physical resilience, keep seeking the Lion of Judah.